How does this always happen to Argentina's opponents? Honestly, it is getting a bit scary, to say the least. Argentina won their quarterfinal on Saturday night and marched into the semi-finals, but again, not without extra time and again, not without a big ugly controversy hanging over it. Now, I know a lot of people believe this one was 100% fair, a clean win. Nothing to see here. And maybe. But if you line up everything that has happened around this team, game after game after game, it gets genuinely hard not to feel like something is being steered, like the outcome keeps getting nudged. So let me ask it plainly. How does this keep happening over and over, only ever to the team standing in Argentina's way? Is it just wild coincidence stacked on wild coincidence? Or is somebody, somewhere, making sure the result comes out the same? Let's dive into it because, when you pile it all up, it is honestly kind of insane. First, understand the position Argentina were in because they did not stroll through this. This is now 3 knockout games in a row where the defending champions have played with fire and very nearly burned to the ground. They needed extra time and a 111th minute own goal to survive Cape Verde. They needed a miracle comeback from 2 goals down to escape Egypt. And here in Kansas City, in front of 69,045 people on a hot, humid Missouri night at Arrowhead Stadium, they were in trouble all over again. It started well enough. Inside 10 minutes, Messi swung in a corner and Alexis Mac Allister glanced a header into the far corner. That was Messi's 10th career World Cup assist. And here's a lovely bit of trivia. Every single one of those 10 assists has been for a different goalscorer, all the way back to 2006. 1-0. Job looking straightforward. And then it wasn't. Argentina couldn't build on the lead, and Switzerland, far from rolling over, took the game by the scruff of the neck. Murat Yakin's side controlled the ball, played on the front foot, and by the second half were creating chance after chance. The numbers tell it plainly. Before the turning point, Switzerland had racked up 18 touches in the Argentina box to Argentina's 4. The world champions were being outplayed, and it finally showed in the 67th minute when Dan Doy squeezed a shot from a tight angle underneath Emiliano Martinez to make it 1-1. Switzerland had the momentum. They had the energy. They had the belief. And an Argentina exit suddenly looked not just possible, but likely. Yakin was already thinking about throwing on fresh attackers to go and win it. This was Switzerland's game. And then came the moment that detonated it. 5 minutes after that equalizer, Argentina's Leandro Paredes went in on Embolo, and referee João Pinheiro reached into his pocket and booked Paredes for the challenge. Except the VAR team, sitting in their broadcast center in Dallas, started looking at the replays. There hadn't really been any contact at all. Embolo had gone down before Paredes even reached him. To put it plainly, Embolo had dived. So the VAR recommended the referee take a look at the monitor. And here's where it gets strange. The review wasn't officially about the dive. It was flagged under mistaken identity. The wrong player had been booked. Pinheiro went to the screen, withdrew the yellow card he'd given Paredes, and instead showed it to Embolo. Because Embolo had already been booked in the first half, ironically, for a foul on that very same Paredes, that second yellow meant only one thing. Red card. Off. Gone. Embolo crumpled, face in his hands, tears streaming, inconsolable, led away by teammates while a nation's World Cup hopes walked off with him. Switzerland, who moments earlier had been the better team with a full complement of players, were now down to 10 men for the rest of normal time and all of extra time. Now, let me show you just how rare what you just watched actually is. Because this is the part that should make your eyebrows rise. Getting a second yellow card, and therefore being sent off, specifically for diving at a World Cup has happened to exactly 4 players in the last 60 years. 4. Embolo just joined a list containing Mexico's Luis Perez, Ghana's Asamoah Gyan, and Italy's Francesco Totti. 60 years. Think about how many dives you see in a single match, let alone a whole tournament. Players go down theatrically a dozen times a game, every game, and it almost never results in a sending off. And yet here, in a World Cup quarterfinal with Argentina on the ropes, VAR stepped in and produced one of the rarest red cards in the entire history of the competition. The timing, you have to admit, is really something. And the mechanics of how they got there are almost comically convoluted. Here's the irony that should genuinely bother you. Under the rules, the dive itself could not have been reviewed on its own. VAR is not allowed to just spot a dive far from goal and intervene. The only reason the whole thing became reviewable is that Pinheiro had shown a card to Paredes in the first place. That card, the wrong card, is what triggered the mistaken identity protocol and opened the door for VAR to step in and flip it onto Embolo. So, a refereeing error booking the wrong man became the mechanism that allowed VAR to send off Argentina's opponent. Read that back slowly. If the referee had simply waved play on, as many felt he should have, none of this could have happened. It took a mistake to manufacture the review, and the consequences were total. This wasn't a marginal decision that tweaked the game at the edges. It broke it in half. Before the red card, Switzerland had 54% of the possession and were the more dangerous team. After it, Argentina had 76% of the ball. After it, Argentina piled up 17 shots to Switzerland's 2. The expected goals over the final stretch read 1.61 for Argentina to a pitiful 0.03 for Switzerland. Yakin's entire game plan, the one that had Argentina rattled, was ripped up in a single moment at a monitor. Eventually, deep in extra time, Julian Alvarez, scoreless the whole tournament until that point, curled an absolute beauty into the top corner from outside the box in the 112th minute. Lautaro Martinez added a breakaway third at the death, making it 3-1 and sending Argentina into the semifinals. But nobody seriously believes the game plays out the same way 11 against 11. Switzerland understandably were livid. Defender Nico Elvedi said flatly, "I just don't understand how VAR can make that kind of decision." Midfielder Remo Freuler called it simply a disaster. Captain Granit Xhaka, who has seen everything the game has to offer, insisted Switzerland had been the better side and that the red card changed the entire complexion of the match. You could feel the sense of grievance pouring off them. And their frustration goes to a bigger point about this whole tournament, one that has almost nothing to do with Argentina specifically. VAR is having a genuinely rough World Cup. It has caused controversy in nearly every round, and the complaint keeps coming back to the same thing. It's not that the technology gets decisions wrong so much as that it keeps inserting itself into moments where the game would have been better left alone, snuffing out momentum and emotion to enforce the absolute letter of the law. Xhaka nailed the sentiment when he said, "The rules are the rules and can't be changed, but this was a decision where you kill the game." That's the phrase that's going to stick to VAR this summer. Switzerland were flying. They had the crowd. They had the belief. They had a full team and a plan that was working. And a screen in another city reached in and switched all of it off in an instant. Yakin was blunter still, saying his side had been dominant, that they controlled the match, and that they were punished by a rule he found incomprehensible and frankly unnecessary. A team that felt it thoroughly deserved a semi-final place instead went home because of 90 seconds at a monitor. So now, let's take it seriously because this is where I have to be honest with you. And honesty cuts both ways here. On the pure facts of the decision, Argentina were not robbed, and Switzerland, painful as it is to say, were not exactly robbed either because Embolo did dive. That much is genuinely hard to argue. And the mistaken identity rule brought in for this World Cup really does allow VAR to intervene when the wrong player of either team is carded. So, by the cold letter of the law, Joel Pinheiro's final decision was correct. Simulation is cheating. Diving is against the rules. And a player who throws himself to the ground to con the referee has technically brought the punishment on himself. The most telling thing of all is that even Switzerland's own coach, Murat Yakin, as furious as he was, stopped short of crying conspiracy. Asked directly, he said, "I wouldn't say they are being favored." He blamed a bad rule and a refereeing mistake, not a fix, and that matters. That's an honest man refusing to reach for the easy accusation, and it deserves to be quoted right alongside the outrage. But here is where it gets uncomfortable, and here is the real story. Because the problem was never whether this one call was technically correct. The problem is the pattern, and the pattern is getting impossible to explain away. Think about what VAR has actually done this tournament. When it should have intervened, it went silent. When Egypt screamed for a penalty in stoppage time against Argentina, VAR stayed quiet and let the game roll on. But when it should arguably have stayed silent, it came roaring out for the smallest things. It rewound 17 seconds and the length of a pitch to disallow a brilliant Egyptian goal against Argentina. And now it reaches into a harmless dive by the touchline, far from goal, offering no real advantage, to send off Argentina's opponent in a quarterfinal. When VAR needs to speak, it loses its voice. When it needs to keep quiet, it can't help itself. And somehow, game after game, the beneficiary of that inconsistency keeps wearing the same sky blue and white stripes. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is 100% proof of anything because it isn't. And anyone who claims certainty is selling you something. But you'd have to be willfully blind not to notice the run. Cast your mind back over Argentina's tournament. There was Lionel Messi's studs-up challenge on Algeria's captain that somehow escaped any card at all. There was the whole Egypt night, the disallowed goal, and the waved-away penalty that produced a formal complaint accusing FIFA of protecting Argentina. There was the run of uncalled fouls in the Cape Verde game, and that's before you even reach back to Qatar 2022, where Argentina were awarded a record 5 penalties in a single tournament and a Messi handball against the Netherlands went unpunished. Every single one of those moments, without exception, fell in Argentina's favor. At some point, a long enough run of coincidences stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a coin that only ever lands one way. And it's always a referee's whistle or a VAR screen doing the flipping. So, no, we're not saying the Embolo red card was some smoking gun, some deliberate act of sabotage cooked up in a control room. What we're saying is that it is one more entry on a list that has grown far too long to keep shrugging off, and that it landed in the exact tournament where FIFA has already burned every last drop of its credibility. When you spend a World Cup suspending red cards after phone calls, ignoring formal complaints, and appointing eyebrow-raising officiating crews, you forfeit the benefit of the doubt on everything that follows, including the calls that happen to be correct. This is the poison of it. Even a technically right decision now gets filed by millions of people under, "Here we go again," because the organization asking for trust has spent months proving it can't be trusted. FIFA didn't just damage its reputation this summer. It taught the entire world to assume the worst. And now it can't unteach that lesson, no matter how defensible any individual call might be. And here's the delicious twist that makes the whole "Argentina are being carried" narrative so complicated. This is also clearly a vulnerable Argentina because, for all the favorable whistles, this team is genuinely wobbling. Messi failed to score for the first time in 10 World Cup matches, snapping an astonishing streak. And for the first time all tournament, he was outshone by one of his own teammates. He was quiet, held to just 3 shots. A 39-year-old visibly running on fumes after dragging his country through extra time against Cape Verde, 90 minutes against Egypt, and now another 2 hours here. And honestly, you could hardly blame him. Asking a man of that age to play 120 minutes, then 90, then 120 again in the space of 8 days and still single-handedly win knockout games is bordering on absurd. This time, someone else had to carry it. Julian Alvarez, who had not scored a single goal in the entire tournament, picked the biggest moment imaginable to produce a contender for goal of the World Cup. That curling 24-yard strike into the top corner was, as much as anything, proof that Lionel Scaloni has quietly built a team that can win without a glimpse of Messi magic, leaning on McAllister, Alvarez, and Lautaro Martinez to drag it over the line. Which is just as well because their defense has sprung leaks everywhere, conceding 5 goals across these last 3 games, with Lisandro Martinez openly admitting the team need to be a little more focused. So, the picture is genuinely strange, a team that keeps getting the rub of the green from officials and is still somehow hanging on by its fingernails in every single round. Both of those things are true at once, and that's what makes this Argentina run the most fascinating and most argued about story of the tournament. So where does it leave us? Argentina march onto a mouth-watering semi-final against old rivals England on Wednesday, with Messi 4 days away from another chance to pad his all-time World Cup goal record, which already stands at 21. And you can already feel the storm brewing around that one. Because if you think the officiating is under a microscope now, wait until Argentina walk out against an England side that just needed extra time of its own to see off Norway. Every whistle in that game is going to be dissected frame by a global audience already primed to cry foul the instant a 50-50 goes the champion's way. Whoever FIFA appoints to that semi-final is walking into the hottest seat of the entire tournament, and they'll know it. Switzerland fly home gutted, convinced that a brand new rule nobody fully understood, and a screen in Dallas, cost them a place in the last four, a game they believed they were winning. And FIFA once again faces a furious opponent, a fresh wave of accusations, and a global audience that has stopped giving it the benefit of the doubt entirely. Whether or not you believe a single conspiratorial word of it, that reputation is now the story, and FIFA built it brick by brick all summer long. Argentina keeps surviving. And somehow, every time they do, there's a referee or a VAR monitor standing right there in the frame. Are Argentina genuinely being helped through this tournament, or are we all just pattern hunting because we don't trust FIFA anymore? I go back and forth on it myself. So make your case down below, and stick around because Argentina versus England on Wednesday is going to be absolute box office.